Is the risk to corporate America greater than ever, and will the U.S. government retaliate against Russia? Our next guest is a former NSA and Marine Corps hacker who now helps the corporate world assess its cyber vulnerabilities. David Kennedy, our frequent guest, is CEO and founder of Trusted Sec, which has operations in 20 countries and whose clients include 3 of the Fortune top 5 companies. David, welcome. Good to have you with us. I don't know exactly where to begin, but why don't I begin here? We hear and see on advertisements all the time about the cloud. It's coming. It's here. It's vital. But is it vulnerable?
That's what we're starting to see. When you start looking at the capabilities of these attackers, and it's not just, what we see from a nation state perspective from Russia, China, Iran, North Korea. We're also seeing these with the ransomware groups that are out there too, where their capabilities are continuously increasing because they're making so much money. And a lot of the research is into cloud providers, or also what we call managed service providers. And the thing that keeps me up at night, that keeps me personally as a cybersecurity professional up at night, are these supply chain attacks, because it's not a one-to-one where it's hacking a JBS or a Colonial Pipeline from a ransomware perspective. You're talking about impacting thousands, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of companies and organizations all around the world now from a single source or single hack. And so you look at the Russians, they've had a lot of success. Their early launch of this was NotPetya a number of years ago, where they targeted Ukrainian tax software. They then continued with SolarWinds, and now we're seeing them target managed service providers. Every other adversary that we have in the United States is also looking at this and saying, this is an area of opportunity. Cloud's definitely the next evolution of attack for us.
Are the major cloud companies, and I think of Alphabet, I think of Amazon, I think of Microsoft, are they the point of vulnerability, or are others who feed into the cloud sort of secondary contractors the vulnerability?
Unfortunately, right now, it's all of the above. We look at SolarWinds, right? SolarWinds, they had success because, they hacked into Microsoft, Intel, VMware, Cisco. The technological backbone of our entire society, of how it operates today, was compromised from, a third-party secondary company that happened to have access to their infrastructure. And unfortunately, this is how we've designed our security systems. We trust our third parties. We use things like Salesforce and Amazon for, shipping goods and things of that effect. We, bolt in other, computer systems so that we can advance faster in technology versus developing it ourselves, which has worked well for us right now. But the models that we came up with around this weren't designed to handle the level of threats that we're seeing today from these adversaries. And again, it's not just nation states anymore. We saw with Kaseya where, we had our Evil, which is a ransomware group, target a managed service provider and target thousands of customers. So it's not just, these high sophisticated level of adversaries like Russia and China. It's also ransomware now, which is particularly alarming for us.
And as you point out, David, the cloud is an ideal target for hackers because they get wide access and a huge trove of data. Is it time to move past the cloud? Is it time to get out of the clouds? I mean, is all of this, which is an effort, of course, in some ways for the necessary computing power in certain industries that is required by this pooling of data, but are there other examples where people can do more to protect themselves by unplugging from it, by moving more on site, whatever it is?
Yeah, that's a great point to bring up. And I think, we have to look at what type of information and what type of trust factors we have with these cloud providers, right? Be sensitive around the types of information. If it's our own intellectual property that allows us to be our own competitive, organization or business on the entire scale of the private sector, well, we probably shouldn't put that intellectual property in cloud infrastructure. We should look at other ways of securing our environments as well, and taking into consideration what we call our threat models, which are who are the adversaries, what do they have access to, and how could they get access to our data in the first place, and building multiple layers of defense across it. And we've had a number of companies that have a lot of success with that and those types of strategies, approaching it that way versus, blanket trust against a third-party cloud provider. I think that's what we have to look at.
Let me get one quick final question and answer from you, David. Are we doing nothing, or are we fighting back? We hear about the attacks on us. Why aren't we, or are we, attacking them?
So if you ask me, what are the 2 things that keep it up at night? The supply chain is one, and our capabilities from a cyber warfare perspective are definitely number 2. Just recently, China launched a whole attack against the entire world called Hafnium, and they did that as a sign of force. There was no reason for it from an espionage perspective. It was a sign of force, a dominance factor, saying we're not scared of the United States. We are losing heavily from a policy perspective, geopolitically, from a cyber perspective. And that's also my second thing that keeps me up at night. We have to do more going after these countries and holding them accountable, especially on ransomware, especially on these cyber attacks that we're seeing across, our intellectual property and private sector. We need to go on the offense.
I hear you say, you took the word out of my mouth. I was hearing you say defense is not enough. We've got to have some offense. David, thank you,
100%.
as always.
Thank you. Appreciate it.